How's that food?
Finished and eaten. Had a gyro sandwich and zucchini and some olives. Nice to be able to eat normal again. Well, when I was sick that one week, man, it was chicken soup every day.
I get you. There we are. There I am. All right, got that going. Can you see me okay? I need to get some little bit more light on me. There we go.
Like the hat.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to start making these actually.
Got the tomahawk there behind the We the People.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of hard to see because of my lighting. Let me turn this on real quick. This will make it a little bit better.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I don't like to have that light on. It's a little bit too much, but this is like I don't think this is enough. You get a little bit more. There it is. It's kind of hard to see. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the class. We've got, let's see, how many do we have on right now? We're building up a little bit.
Oh, well, as we wait for the room to populate, question for you.
Sure.
A lot of people are asking me this. Scott hasn't been on the air much.
No, he's actually not been feeling well. I talked to him yesterday and he was still really not feeling well at all. He said he hasn't felt this bad since one of his accidents, which is that's a pretty hefty statement. So
yeah. Well, I know he's getting attacked too, where he's getting shut down, but at the same time, he's been kind of under the weather. So the combination of the two, right?
So yeah, we don't. I mean, everybody believes that he was the team was attacked some way somehow. We don't know exactly what that was, but you know he's still in bad shape, and there's several of the people are also in kind of bad shape. So.
Well, as also we're waiting for this to populate, just to let the listeners know, I'm a part of a podcast usually on Sundays at Patriot Soapbox for a program called For the Republic from 5 to 7. And then there's another show I'm on. It's called The Show. And I work with a guy out of South Dakota who's been a fan of what I do since like 2007. And he finally wrote me in to do a podcast with him every once in a while. And if anybody's interested in checking out the audio, it's an audio podcast.
Okay.
The Show 57401. That's The Show 57401.buzzsprout.com. And then as for AM radio, everybody's familiar with my.
You're still doing AM. You're still doing the 1420 or 1490.
1490. Yeah. So everybody's familiar with that. Saturdays from 1 to 3 on KMET. That's 1 to 3 Pacific. From 1 to 3 in the afternoon on KMET1490am.com. But I've also started a show on K-Praise down in San Diego. So I'm also on KPRZ.com on Saturday nights at 9 Pacific. They are making the podcast page now so you can listen to the old episodes. So far, I've done 2. And that one's a solo effort. It's just me. And it's the Constitution through the lens of Christianity. So it's got more of a faith-based edge to it, put it that way. And I've gotten a lot of good responses on that show. So go
give me 1 second, Doug. I'm going to address a couple of some people in the comments. Guys, Scott's still he's still down a little bit. He will be back. He will be back. Let's see. Thank you, Joanne. Yes, we're gonna. This is a new design. I'm gonna start to. I'm gonna have to get this done locally as opposed to using the fulfillment center that we currently use. But this is I've gotten a lot of compliments on this. Thank you. Marianne, now I understand your sentiment, but I don't believe the tour was a mistake. But you're not the only one to express that sentiment. No, Michelle, they did not get attacked physically. Physically, there was I think it might have been a biological, some sort of a biological attack or some sort of a weapon, some sort of a. I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate. All I know is that he's sick. He's not feeling well.
No, so sick at the same time, right?
Right. Exactly. So we've got 85 watching now. So let's jump in. We are doing the introduction to the Bill of Rights today.
Mm-hmm.
So you have enough time to munch that food?
Oh yeah, no, I'm all caught up. Yeah, I have a class in the mornings in Fallbrook, which is a little over half an hour drive from my house, and after the class is over, I'm like there for like 2 hours answering questions. And so rather than having a couple hours to prepare, I'm eating as I'm driving home and munching before the show starts here. So all of you Patriot Street Fighters, I apologize if it looks like I'm munching on something or sipping on a soda. I'm just trying to catch up here. I was out for a couple weeks. I was sick 2 weeks ago. I wound up still doing this show while I wasn't feeling good, but I canceled all my other classes. And then last week I was out of town, and I was considering doing the class on Tuesday, but I just don't have any internet up there. I mean, in order to do anything, I got to like sit in the parking lot at McDonald's and use their Wi-Fi. I mean, that's about the only internet I have up there.
It would have been poor because I was trying to think of a way to get that done, because I was like, man, we are doing every other week. We need to get this more consistent on a weekly basis. So
well, I think we're going to be weekly now for a while.
We're going to make this happen, guys. We're going to make this happen. And if it's not me, it's going to be Scott. I know you guys are eager to see Scott, and listen, I'm just a substitute teacher here trying to get this thing going, because I know this is the teaching of the Constitution is a really important thing to Scott. It's an important thing to me, and it's important to Doug, and it's important to you guys. So we need to get this thing. We need to be a lot more consistent, and we are going to be more consistent, unless it's an act of God. So
yeah, well, getting ill, I still made sure I did it. Going out of town, it just was the thing. I won't be going up there again until November. And now that said, 16th, 17th, and 18th, or I'm sorry, 17th, 18th, and 19th, 18th of August is my wedding anniversary. So we'll see whether or not I can do it on the Tuesday before the day before my wedding anniversary. I'm going to guess yes, but we may not, because as much as I love the Constitution, I love you guys. I hate to say this, my wife outranks you.
Well, maybe if what we could do is, if we could do it earlier, we could do it earlier and have it. Yeah. So
yeah, perhaps. Well, we're going to go out of town. But anyway.
I want to make sure that this is whether it's Scott or myself. I want to make sure that this is much more consistent going forward.
Right. Well, the only dates I foresee that we may have to miss once again is that Tuesday, the day before my wedding anniversary, possibly. And then there's a week in October. October 17th through 23rd. I'm going to be in. My wife and I are going to Kentucky to see the Ark and the Creation Museum.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And so that week. But other than that, we should be good every week. All right. So let's get to everybody got their pocket Constitution. If you don't have a pocket Constitution, you have a book with a Constitution. Remember, you can go to douglasvgibbs.com. And on that main page, far right, there's a link to my documents page, and there's a link for the Constitution. It's right there online. So if you don't have a document, if you don't have a printed version, the online version is available to you.
Scott, excuse me, one second, Doug. And if you guys have questions that you want to ask Doug, by all means, ask them as they come in, and I will when there's a break, I'll make sure they get those questions relayed to Doug. I keep wanting to say Scott for some reason. That's Scott on my tongue.
So I'm slightly prettier, but he's got bigger muscles. So hey.
I don't know about that. I'm gonna plead the fifth.
I tell you what, when I met him, man, I mean, the dude's got some cannons
He was, he was a competitive bodybuilder. So I mean, he did that's what he did. He's held on to that. So anyway,
we've got good people with Scott. I love being associated with him. All right, Patriot Street Fighters. So we are on the Bill of Rights, but before we start talking about the First Amendment and all of that, a lot of people don't realize that there is a preamble to the Bill of Rights that was written, which explains really why the Bill of Rights needed to be written. And we have to understand, during the Constitutional Convention, there were a lot of people who were very upset with the Constitution being written because there was no Bill of Rights right there at the onset. And in fact, three people were in the convention for the entire convention, one of them being George Mason, who refused to sign the Constitution because it didn't have a Bill of Rights, among other reasons. And so once that Constitution got out there, 1787 is when it was written. It was ratified in 1788. Well, in 1789, they proposed the Bill of Rights. And in 1791, it was fully ratified. And so there was, and now the history behind that is this. People ask me, well, Doug, how did they know they needed a Bill of Rights? How did they know what a Bill of Rights was? Well, that goes back to the British system. We go all the way back to the Magna Carta, which was really the first written constitution in Britain. And then in 1688 in Britain, and because remember, our ancestors in this country, the colonists, were Englishmen, so their history was the British history. And in 1688, there was something called the Glorious Revolution. The Glorious Revolution was a revolution that changed government, changed the leadership, and not a single shot was fired. It was a peaceful revolution. So yes, my friends, it can be done. For those of you wondering if that could happen today. And what followed in 1689 was the English Declaration of Rights, the English Bill of Rights. And our Bill of Rights is largely framed after that original Bill of Rights for the English. Now, that said, after the Constitution was written and there was a demand for a Bill of Rights, the word went out to the states, send your proposals in, and we'll have our Congress take a look at it, and then Congress will propose, the final version back out to the states for approval. And over 100 proposals came in from the states. Over 100 proposed amendments to the Constitution. And so among many, George Mason was one of the people that was involved in putting it together. He was one of the people demanding it. One of the people that had been originally against the Bill of Rights, didn't feel it was necessary, was James Madison. He says, hey, we don't need a Bill of Rights that says the federal government can't do something. They're not given the authorities in the first place. It'll muddy the waters. It'll create confusion. But as the push for a Bill of Rights increased, and Madison worked indirectly with Mason and other people putting it together, it wound up becoming Madison that really pushed the Bill of Rights in the House of Representatives and got the thing through Congress. So it's a very interesting story, but involved in that Bill of Rights, a part of the Bill of Rights is a preamble to the Bill of Rights to help explain what the Bill of Rights was all about. So first, let's read the preamble to the Bill of Rights. For those of you who have this particular pocket constitution that I've got in my hand here, the one from nccs.net, that's on page 20 of that pocket constitution. Congress of the United States, begun and held at the city of New York. Remember, they were meeting in New York first. Then it was moved to Philadelphia and ultimately to Washington, D.C. While the president, the White House became residence during Adams' presidency, Congress did not begin meeting in Washington, D.C. until 1800. So it says, begun and held at the city of New York on Wednesday, the 4th of March, 1789. So remember, that's when this was proposed. The conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction and abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. Now, let me break this down a little bit. So the conventions of a number of the states, because remember, when the state legislatures were looking at the Constitution, whether or not to ratify it, they also held conventions. The people came in, they talked about it, it was debated. Legislature debated it, the people debated it. There was a lot of questions. And during that time, a lot of people expressed a desire for these additional clauses, these additional amendments. But here's the key part here. In order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers. Who's the it? The federal government. Understand, first of all, the federal government is not a who, it is an it. It says so right there in that preamble of the Constitution. Number two, understand that the purpose of this Bill of Rights was to guard against the federal government abusing the powers that was given to it. So originally, the Bill of Rights was only written to the federal government regarding the federal government. So the states were not expected to have to follow this, and there's reasons for that, and I'll get into that later. I'm not saying that the states can stomp all over your rights, but I'm telling you from a legal point of view, this was intended to tell the federal government that you can't touch these rights and the reasons why. Then it says, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. In other words, in order for this federal government to work properly, we're going to need this Bill of Rights, is what it's saying. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, the Congress assembled, 2/3 of both houses concurring. In other words, because remember, any amendment has to be proposed by 2/3 of either both houses of Congress or the states. 2/3 of both houses concurring that the following articles be proposed to the legislatures of the several states as amendments to the Constitution of the United States, all or any of which articles, when ratified by 3/4 of the said legislature, shall to be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the said Constitution. Now, notice it says all or any of which articles. In other words, it wasn't a all or nothing.
Doug, let me ask you a question here, because this is something that I want clarification on. So are they saying that if an amendment is going to be proposed that hasn't even been anywhere, that 2/3 of the states have to agree to propose it? Is that what I'm understanding?
2/3 of Congress had to propose it. 3/4 of the state legislatures had to approve it.
I'm talking about just to put it on, just to open it up for discussion, to have Congress even discuss it. You have to have 2/3 of Congress. Like if you're putting a bill, you have to have, if you're having a bill and then you have a co-signer on the bill, then you have to have 2/3 of Congress support that proposal. Is that what I'm reading?
No, okay. First of all, let's not get bills and amendments confused.
I'm not. I'm just trying to draw an analogy.
Now, when it comes to a bill, all it takes is a simple majority. Now, there is something called cloture in the Senate, where it takes at least 60 to end discussion. But to actually approve it, it only takes a majority. But whenever an amendment to the Constitution is proposed, it takes 2/3 of those presents of each house. So in other words, a proposal for an amendment to the Constitution that's being discussed on the floor, it came up. 2/3 of the House has to say they want it to go to the states, and 2/3 of the Senate.
All right. So any one state can propose an amendment, but it has to be approved.
In this case, the states just sent their suggestions. Actual proposal was done by Congress. If you talk about states proposing in Article 5, that's something different. That's the Convention of States.
Okay.
That's a different animal. That's not what was done here. What happened here is they said, hey, states, what are your suggestions?
Okay.
States sent in over 100 suggestions, all 13 of them. But it was Congress that was actually proposing these amendments, not the states. The states submitted suggestions. In other words, their own proposals, but they were suggestions. They weren't for the actual process. The process itself requires one or the other in order to be proposed, either 2/3 of both houses propose it or 2/3 of the states propose it through a convention of states.
Okay.
But those are two
Because
different
I am
animals.
talking about, I'm not talking about the process of making it an actual amendment, or sort of like,
Yeah, you're
I'm
talking about the proposal.
just the proposal process. So
Right. No,
2/3,
I understand.
two-thirds of the states have to, or 2/3 of the Congress has to be on board before they'll even,
Before it can even go out to the states. And notice the
Okay.
president's not mentioned here.
Right.
President has nothing to do with it. 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate propose an amendment. They get one vote less than 2/3. It doesn't go out to the states. And it's of those present. So you have to have a quorum. So at least, so you have to have more than half of each house in session, in attendance. Then of those present, 2/3 minimum of each house has to approve that proposal before it can go out to the states.
gotcha.
Okay. Once again, president has nothing to do with it. What happened here was they said, hey, states, you guys want this Bill of Rights? Give us some ideas. Send them in. And over 100 suggestions came in. And the group of people led by George Mason narrowed it down to, and the number, changes depending on who you're talking to, anywhere from 17 down to 14. But from what I've studied, they narrowed it down to 14. Then Congress voted on those 14, and only 12 of them got 2/3 approval by each house. So 2 of the proposed amendments by the group that took all the suggestions from the Senate, from the states, didn't even go out to the states because they didn't get past the Congress. So 14 went to Congress, 12 got approved by 2/3 of each house, went out to the states, and of those 12, only 10 got 3/4 approval by the states. To ratify takes 3/4. And that's a big number. So it better be good. You need 3/4 of the states to ratify an amendment for it to become a part of the Constitution. Now, understand, Congress can propose, but it still takes the states to ratify. Congress cannot change Constitution without approval from the states. Remember, the states are the parents here. They created this government, so they're going to have final say. Okay, so when you read this preamble, that's what it says. 2/3 of both houses concurring that the following articles be proposed by the legislatures of the several states as amendments to the Constitution of the United States, all or any of which articles. In other words, it didn't have to be all or none. And it wasn't all of them. Only 10 out of the 12 met muster. In the long run, an 11th one was also ratified, but in 1992, and it became the 27th Amendment. The 12th one is still hanging out there. And we could talk about which one that is down the road. And then it says, when ratified by 3/4 of the said legislatures. Now, in Article 5, it says that Congress can has the option to choose the method of ratification. Otherwise, it's up to the state. In this case, they chose the method of ratification. You have the choice of convention or the state legislature's direct vote. They indicate here in this preamble, it has to be a state legislature direct vote. So it says, when ratified by 3/4 of the said legislatures to be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the said Constitution. Articles in addition to an amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America proposed by Congress and ratified by the legislatures of the several states pursuant to the 5th article of the original Constitution. That gives you the list of who was there. Frederick Augustus Muhlenberg, who was Speaker of the House. John Adams, who was Vice President of the United States, so that made him President of the Senate. Those are the 2 signatures, along with the John Beckley, who was Clerk of the House, and Sam Otis, who was Secretary of the Senate. So those are your 2 secretaries. So 2 were not adopted, 10 were. So the first 10 amendments became the Bill of Rights. These are amendments to the Constitution, additions to the original Constitution. Original Constitution is 7 articles, which we've gone through. Now we have 10 more articles being added as amendments. And that process, once again, Congress, 2/3 of each house proposes, 3/4 of states have to ratify. Then once that ratification is met, then it becomes a part of the Constitution. Make sense? All right, now that language I mentioned earlier, once again, I want to go back to it because I want people to understand this. The purpose of this is to prevent misconstruction or abuse of federal power. Even your most liberal historians will tell you that originally the Bill of Rights only applied to the federal government. So for example, in the Second Amendment, and I don't want to get too much into it yet because we're not there yet, but just use this as an example. The language shall not be infringed is at the end. That means absolutely no laws. So in other words, if this is to the federal government, every single federal gun law is unconstitutional. The Second Amendment, however, is not supposed to apply to the states because shall not be infringed would then apply to the states, and the states could make no laws regarding guns. And the fact is, on our rights, the states were given the authority to make a few laws if necessary. And I'm real happy about the fact that my granddaughter, who's 8, can't walk into a gun store and go buy a gun. Now, there's some people that are such gun people that say, no, she should be able to. Well, I'm happy she can't. I'm happy that law exists, but I don't want the federal government making that law. It says shall not be infringed, but the state can. The problem with allowing the states making these laws is sometimes the states go too far. Living in California, don't I know it? Whose fault is that? The Constitution allowing the states to make laws? No, it's ours because we let them make those kinds of laws. And there's no anti-gun language. There's no gun protection language. Should I say, I don't know why I said anti-gun. There's no gun protection language in the state constitution of California. It's the only one.
Right.
Every single other state constitution has language for gun protection, gun rights. California's doesn't. Now, you know, California became a state in 1850. I don't know why when they wrote their original state constitution, and ever since that, it was never put in there. Maybe they weren't worried. Everybody had a gun. It was the Wild West, right?
Well, and it's also, you know, they were so far removed from the revolution, they didn't really understand why it would be needed.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was.
I mean, you know, because most of the states, most of the states came. Most of the people that were in the eastern states came or were raised with the mindset of fighting off, you know, the British war, you know, War of Independence, War of 1812. That was always in their head, in their mind. California's on the West Coast, so far removed from anything like that. That maybe that wasn't even in their brain.
Perhaps.
I'm postulating.
Sure. Now that said, I've always joked California is actually very similar to the way it was in 1850. You know, problems with the electricity. Everybody speaks Spanish and gunfights in the streets. But the only difference now is the men hold hands. But yeah. All right. But anyway, so the Bill of Rights was created to tell the federal government, hey, by the way, we have these rights and they're none of your business. And understand something about our rights, because I really want people to understand this. We have this idea in our head that government's there to protect and guarantee your rights. We have this idea that our rights are guaranteed by the Constitution. You don't have constitutional rights. You don't have rights because they're in the Constitution. You don't have rights because government says you have them. You have rights because God gave you those rights. Mm-hmm. You have God-given rights, natural rights, and they belong to you. Government's job when it comes to your rights is to get the hell out of the way. And that's what the Bill of Rights says. Very first words from the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Final words of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. First words in the Third Amendment, no soldier shall. Right in the middle of the Fourth Amendment, shall not be violated. That's not language telling government to guarantee and protect your rights. That's language telling them, stay away from our rights. They belong to us. None of your dang business. Period. And when it comes to our rights, understand because we hear about people say, well, that's my right. And, government's got to protect no, government's not there to protect your rights. You're there to protect your rights. They belong to you. Quit asking government to protect them. They're the enemy. They want to take away your access to your rights. They want to interfere. Their job is not to interfere, to restrain themselves regarding their rights. And that's why in the Declaration of Independence, it says the life, liberty, and the, I bet you every one of you, the moment I held out my hand and did that, went pursuit of happiness. Because we know you don't have the right to be happy. You have the right to pursue happiness. You have a right to pursue that right. I don't have a right to an education. I have a right to pursue it. Government's not supposed to get in the way, though, of my pursuit of it.
Right.
I can choose how I get that education. That's what individualism, choice is choice. And liberty is choice. And government's not supposed to get in the way. I don't have a right to health care, but I have a right to pursue it. And government's not supposed to get in the way of my pursuance of that. Do I want company A, B, C, or no insurance at all? My decision. Government's not supposed to get in the way. Or how about this one? And this is the one I really want to spend some time talking about for a moment. You don't have a right to have a cake baked exactly the way you want, but you do have the right to pursue it. And in that pursuit, that means there's going to be some people that don't make the cake because they have a right
to not make
it. Well, I don't know. They have to make it. I have that right. No, your right is to pursue happiness. Go pursue it. Find the baker that will make it for you. Government's not supposed to get in the way. None of government's business. Go find your baker. But don't try to use law to force somebody because your right, while you're pursuing something, stops at the edge of the next person's right. So if someone has religious liberties or something like that, that is offended by your right that you're pursuing, then that's not where you should be pursuing it. Pursue it elsewhere. You have a right to pursue. You have a right. You have a right to pursue your lifestyle, make yourself happy, but you don't have a right to force it on other people because they have a right not to have it forced on them. Understand? So your rights your rights are not. Our problem is we have it so misunderstood what our rights are about. Well, that's my right, darn it, and I'm going to get it even if I force them with government. No, government's supposed to get out of the way. Our rights, that's between us. I have a right to swing my arms. Ron has a right not to be punched in the nose. So I'm supposed to be responsible with my right to swing my arms by not punching him in the nose. If I think I have a right to have a cake baked a certain way, then I'm supposed to be responsible with that right and not punch the wrong baker in the nose with trying to force them to do it. Swing your arms elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Have your cake baked elsewhere. Pursuit of happiness. Now, understand something else about rights, and I've said this before, but I want to make sure this is understood. And in fact, I've got someone at my San Juan Capistrano class, and this really hit him hard. He told me this, so it's really made me understand. I need to make sure this is understood. Every single person ever born has all of these rights. Everybody, the people in China, the people in Africa, the people in India, the people in Israel, the people in Europe, the people here, all are born with the same rights. We are all created equal, meaning we all have the same natural rights. We all have them. Well, no, Doug, if someone lives in this country, in communist China, they don't have those rights. Oh, they do. They just don't have access to them because the government system's in the way. It's disallowing them from accessing the rights that God gave to them. God's been here longer than government.
Amen to that.
So my rights given to me by God outranks government. Their job is to stay out of the way because those are my God-given rights. None of your business, government. God gave them to me, and he's been around longer than you. That's the attitude. But the problem is we have these political systems who think they can interfere with our rights. So they block our access to the rights. But every single person ever born has the same rights. It's their possession. The problem isn't whether or not they have the rights. The problem is whether or not they're in a political system that allows them access to those rights. I hope that makes sense, because I
John
really want
is-
people to
John-
understand that.
John is asking, so they have no right in pushing the emergency trying to be sensitive to the YouTube algorithms, the thing that they poke you in the arm with.
You know, from a truly constitutional point of view, that's none of their business. I have the choice. My medical decisions are my medical decisions. I have a right to pursue that if I want the poke, or I have the right not to pursue it. That's my choice. They
Right.
can offer it. They can say, hey, we think this is good for you. And they can advertise it. We think this is good for you all they want. But in the end, that's my decision.
Correct.
Now, the problem is we have a court decision that says otherwise. I disagree with this court decision, this ruling, this judicial opinion, and I don't believe they should be using it from a constitutional standpoint, but this is what they're using. Jacobson v. Massachusetts. I can't remember if it's 1905 or 1907. I think it's 1905. And what Chief Justice John Harlan Marshall said was that you have individual liberties. Unless the community is in danger, then your individual liberties are suspended until the danger passes. Because the collective is more important than your individualism. The collective community, protecting it, the safety of the community is more important than your individual rights. Therefore, your individual rights are suspended until the emergency passes. And I have two words for that. Bullshit. Yes, I know. You don't hear me use profanity often, but that one pisses me off.
Wow. Struck a nerve.
Struck a nerve. Hey, you want to piss off the Constitution, guy? Start messing with my liberty, buddy. You can take my money, talk crap on my wife, but you start messing with my liberty, I'm going to hit you. But no, seriously, Jacobson v. Massachusetts. What happened was there was a smallpox epidemic in Massachusetts, and the state mandated that you had to get inoculated, that you had to get the quote unquote vaccine for smallpox, and if you didn't, you would be fined a $20 fine, and you could be jailed. And a pastor and his son, who, if you read really into the history, his son was vaccine injured in the past also, said, no, I don't want the vaccine. I want nothing to do with it. And you don't have a right. You don't have the authority to fine me for making my own choice in liberty. I'm choosing not to pursue having something dangerous put into my arm. Went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, sorry, there's a community emergency. We need to protect the community. Therefore, your individual liberties are suspended. I disagree with that, but that's what they're operating on. That's the kind of thinking they're operating with. And the thing is, when it comes to the poke, the jab, and
whatever.
Yeah, there's other words I like to use that has that also sounds a little bit like you just grabbed your ankles, but we'll not go into that. But that's essentially what it is.
Mhm.
Federal government has no authority to demand it. Anyway, there's nothing the Constitution gives them that authority. Each state, it depends on how the state constitution is written. So far, I've read 18 state constitutions on this, and none of them have that authority either, including California. Because there are certain things you're allowed to say no to.
This may be off topic, but I had to fly to Dallas Sunday, and then I flew back yesterday. Well, when I was flying, I kept seeing all the signs that it's federal law to have to wear a mask. Okay, and of course, you know, when they come over the loudspeaker in the airport, I'm like, no, it's not. You know, I'm loud. Because I don't really care what anybody thinks. But I looked it up. I looked it up, and they're using some sort of a decision from like 1945 or 46, saying that the federal health agency has the ability to mandate a something and make it a law, and you can be punishable. So they're saying that the CDC has the ability to mandate that. That is BS to me. And then
The only part of government that can make law is Congress.
Exactly. As that's the only Congress is the only part of government that can make law.
Right.
So when I saw that, I was like, what are you talking about? So I was going to ask you to explain how they use that to just, is it not, are they using?
Okay, first of all, CDC falls under the executive department.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like an executive order. It's really the same thing. And what that is it's an edict. An edict is a recommendation by the executive that you should take heed to. In other words, you should take into consideration. At what part does that, in what part of that definition or that explanation does it say it's mandatory?
It
isn't. There's no law, first of all. Second of all, all Article 1, Section 1, remember that? All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress. So law, creation of law, that's a legislative power. So only Congress can make law. So for them to call it law, it's not law.
It's not law.
My first question is, give me the bill number from Congress. Well, it is no bill number. CDC made it. Well, then it's not a law. It's an edict. There is no law, and they can't make that law. There's no authority to make that law. That's why they're not doing it legislatively, because they know they would really get hammered.
Yes, and they don't. I forgot. I lost my train of thought. I was so incensed yesterday when really what it boils down to, Doug, is that we the people abide by it. We go along with it, and so our going along with their edicts basically makes it law because everybody's going along with it.
And they don't need law enforcement to enforce it. They've got the businesses enforcing it.
That gets into a whole nother topic of conversation. But if you really want to look at like the whole communist subversion thing, what they're doing is they're using industry and companies and corporations to enforce the communism that the government couldn't do, which is basically the Chinese model.
Right.
They knew the government model couldn't work because the Soviet Union failed. So they did the socialist model with the Chinese model, and that's what we're doing now. But anyway, I digress.
I have a friend of mine who's actually working on a documentary to show how the left in this country is using the communist recipe book to the letter, to the T. And he wants me in the documentary, so I will actually be filmed into it. He's got Sidney Powell in it, a few other people that you'll recognize. Once it's out there, I'll let you know. But get back to, is that law? No. Now, as a private company, can the airline demand that you wear a mask or demand that you've been vaccinated? Technically, yeah. We're a private company. The Constitution was not written to tell the companies what they can and can't do. It was written for government. But here's the nice thing about a free market economy. If you don't like what a company's doing, you don't use the company. Yeah, but Doug, what if there are no companies? Enough of those companies start losing business, somebody will start a company that does something different. That's the wonderful thing about America. But see, they're trying to also stop that. They're trying to quell that as well. Make it harder to get a startup going.
Well, and I don't want to get too far down in the weeds in this, but this is something that I talk about a lot. The people on the left, I believe there's a lot of people on the left who are very well-intentioned individuals, and especially when they talk about the evil corporations, they're absolutely right. What they fail to comprehend is that the policy that they advocate for only further strengthens the very corporations that they claim that are evil, and they just don't understand that.
Also, they lump everything into a single pile of mush.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate corporations. I hate the evil corporations. I hate the ones that collude with government. I don't have a problem with the other corporations. You know what? I never got a job from a poor person. We need rich people. We need corporations. They're the ones that make things move. But when corporations start colluding with government, which is called mercantilism from the founding fathers' point of view, that's a bad thing. And the founding fathers tried to stop mercantilism. They tried to stop that collusion. It was still going on, just not as bad as it is now. It's funny because today, when I was teaching my class in Fallbrook and a couple of companies got brought up, I said, I don't go to those companies. I don't shop there. They said, well, why? Because they don't agree with me politically. And my way of sending a message to them that I don't like what they're up to is I don't patronize those companies.
I think the term for that is boycott.
I do it personally though, so I don't go to Costco anymore. I will never shop at Aldi again. Winco has my business.
No Walmart, no Walmart, no Target, no Starbucks.
I'm willing to go to Walmart on occasion. I will not go to Target. You couldn't pay me to go to Target. But once again, and that depends, and then there's some of these companies you can't help, you can't get away from them. Amazon's one of them. But right. Down the road, we will be able to.
Amazon, I have a little different take on Amazon because Amazon is a conglomerate of individual businesses selling things on there. So if you're shopping on Amazon, you have a higher probability of buying something from somebody from a company who's more privately owned. Amazon's still getting their cut, but you are at least if I'm buying something on Amazon, I'm buying it from a seller, a smaller business who's just using the Amazon marketplace to sell their product. If I go into
my books is a great example of that.
Right, exactly. So if I go into Target, I mean, I'm just giving money straight to Target.
Yeah, and when I'll try not to go down that path.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get in the weeds.
No, that's okay. This is all good because it's all important. It all ties into this.
Correct.
Because it gets back to our rights. What are our rights? Our rights is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Property is a part of that pursuit. I don't have a right to property. I don't have a right for someone to give it to me, but I do have a right to pursue it, to take the steps to pursue it. Government's supposed to stay out of the way so that I can pursue it. See, our rights are something that we pursue, and government's job is to get out of the way, not guarantee, not protect. Get the hell out of the way to secure our rights. In other words, to secure them where they belong, in my possession, in our possession, because they belong to us. They are ours. God gave them to us. They belong to us. Who are they to say, hey, you can't do that? What are you talking about? God gave it to me. They've been around longer than you. You can't tell me I can't do that. And when it comes to our rights and immigration and guns and all of this stuff, one of the ways I like to help people understand this, I can't remember if I've used this analogy on this program or not yet. I use it with my classes. I used it with, matter of fact, the Sheriff Mack event, is this. America, this is our mansion, our house. We own it. It is our mansion. The government, president, Congress, county, state legislature, city council, they are our hired help. They are the butlers and the maids and the groundskeeper and the security guard. Mm-hmm. That's who those people are. They're the hired help. And here's what's going on. The hired help is saying to you, you know what? You have such a nice mansion with so many rooms, so much food in the fridge. We think you should leave your door open. Just let anybody in. You're not very nice if you don't leave the door open. And I'm like, no, the reason I have a nice mansion is because I keep the door closed. When you leave your house, do you leave the door open or do you lock it? Even when someone knocks on the door of your home, you still vet them before you let them in, right? And the maid says, yeah, okay, fine. But you know what? You really make me uneasy. You walk around with that gun on your hip in your house. What are you talking about? It's my house. If I want to walk around with a gun on my hip, I'm going to do it in my house. You can't tell me what gun I'm allowed to wear, whether or not I'm allowed to wear that gun, and you're not going to tell me which ammo I can buy. It's my house. You're the hired help. Who are you to dictate to me these things? But see, that's the attitude we need to take as the consent of the governed. We own this mansion called America. And I want the door closed, and I want people knocking at it before I let them in. And I want them vetted before they come in my house. And they're not just going to raid the refrigerator. You want to be on the property? Work for it. And how dare you tell me how I'm allowed to walk around with whether or not I have a gun on my hip in my house? It's my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't even need a permit from the hired help. It's my house. They're the hired help. That's it. See, that's the difference. It goes back to what I was telling you guys before a few weeks ago. That's the difference between a subject and a citizen. A subject, which is what was going on in Europe back then, is someone who serves the government because the king and the nobles are the ruling elite. We don't have that kind of system. We're not subjects. And if we lose our guns, we will be subjects. We're not supposed to be subjects. We're citizens. Citizens means the government's there to serve us because it's our house and they're the hired help. And our rights, that's what I'm allowed to do in my house because I decide I want to do that. Now, that said, so that everybody in the house gets along nicely and it's an orderly society, I'm willing to give up some of my autonomy for certain rules called laws. For example, I believe I should be able to go through any intersection, any speed if I want. However, I'm willing to give up a little bit of that autonomy for speed limits and stoplights. I'm still getting to go through the intersection, but so that we're not running into each other and we have an orderly society, I'm willing to give up a little bit of autonomy for those laws.
Well, I'm okay with
that's what you do in an orderly society.
I'm
but
kind
the
of
laws are not supposed to go beyond what's necessary.
Yeah, so we need to have no speed limits on the freeway.
So every freeway should be an Autobahn?
Exactly.
No, here's what I think. No, I disagree. Here's what I think we ought to do. We should have the regular freeway with off ramps, and then for long distance, there should be a lane set up in the middle, a little bit elevated. For long distance, has no off ramps, no speed limit up there, but also there's less traffic because that's for the people doing the longer haul. If you don't have to get off for the next 20 miles, go up on that center lane. And then there might be an off ramp 20 miles down the road, and then it'll be left alone again.
I
shouldn't have to pay a toll.
Well, I don't know if I like it elevated. I don't know if I like it elevated, but
we have to because we got nowhere else to put it.
Well, you're talking about California, but I hear what you're saying. But I'm talking, you get out in the deserts, and sorry,
it don't need to be elevated then.
Between for those of you who are in Southern California, you may not know this, or if you're not in California, but between Indio and Blythe, there should be no freaking speed limit. Sorry. Between Indio and Blythe, or between
Indio and Beaumont.
Exactly. There should be no speed limit.
Well, I say there should be no speed limits inside the city of Los Angeles too, but that's just because I want to see them like running into each other. It might, talk about population control. But anyway. no. But the thing is about laws. Here's what it comes down to. It's called the consent to the governed.
Agreed.
You've heard that before, right? Consent to the governed. We give consent to be in the society, and we're willing to give up a little bit of our autonomy for specific necessary laws. The problem is the laws are only supposed to be necessary laws. What's happened is you get these ruling elite people, and then they want to go beyond what's necessary because they think that what makes them a good lawmaker is making laws. Well, guess what? You're not a lawmaker. You're not supposed to be a lawmaker. You're supposed to be a legislator who, when necessary, legislates. Legislating being creating law, modifying law, but you don't do whatever you can to make more law. If ever I ran for Congress, and I've actually seriously considered running for Congress back in 2012. I did a exploratory committee, the whole bit. Then I realized that in order to have a chance, I needed to raise at least 5 million, and I was looking at probably about 50,000. So I decided not to run. But here's what my platform would be if I was running for Congress. No new laws unless absolutely necessary. I am going to propose laws that get rid of laws. In other words, my job is to reduce the number of laws. That's what I'm going to run on, reducing how many laws are out there. Now, some people are like, yeah, but Doug, then you got people going, well, it depends on what it is. Alexis de Tocqueville visited the United States in the 1830s, and you know what he noticed? America was doing fine because people are taking care of their own business without government being involved. They're making their own decisions, taking care of their own business, and getting along just fine. Only the necessary laws were there. You know what else I found in studies? Intersections out there that have no stop sign and no stoplight have less accidents.
You want to watch a really interesting video? Go look at there's I think it's a video from before the earthquake in San Francisco, and they put a video on a trolley car going down, and there was people walking, horses, cars, trains, everything. It's total chaos.
But nobody was running into each other.
And everybody was figuring it out.
Uh-huh. Now, I understand that there's a lot of stupid people out there. I get it. Trust me, I complain about it every day when I'm on the roadway.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a lot of countries out there that have that same thing, or there's, I remember one time when I was in Italy in the Navy. I mean, we were driving on the road, and the lines were more suggestions than they were laws.
Well, you also have different cultural observations and definitions and different styles of. I remember when I was in Atlanta, Georgia, one time, and what I quickly learned was that the red light is not a red light; it's a suggestion. And when your light turns green, don't go instantly, because you'll be hit by the people that are still going through the light after it turned red, going the other way. You're gonna have to wait about 30 seconds. Because the rule in Atlanta seems to be that if you saw the light green at any point while you were driving, when you get there, it's still green, even if it's not. But now I want to get back to the Bill of Rights here. Let's get back on target here. It comes down to this whole discussion is about our rights, though. Your rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Your rights are not protected and guaranteed by government. They're not supposed to be. I don't want government protecting and guaranteed. They're the biggest threat. Why would you want the threat protecting and guaranteeing your rights? It's your job. Now, the Bill of Rights doesn't give you your rights. It enumerates or lists some of them to make sure that the federal government specifically doesn't mess with them. Then in the 9th Amendment, it says, oh, by the way, if there's a right that wasn't mentioned here, you can't stomp on those either. The Bill of Rights was all about making sure that the government understood its job was to stay out of the way of our rights. Congress shall make no law, shall not be infringed, no soldier shall not be violated. Their job is to get out of the way, to restrain themselves and others, if necessary, through law. Because sometimes there are people who want to violate your right. I have the right to live, and someone might want to murder me. So there's a law against murder. So government does get involved to restrain those who might interfere with our rights. But first they must restrain themselves. As for people being informed and understanding things, the stupid people out there, I understand that a lot of people are not informed. I get that. Sometimes I wonder if we should go back to only property owners voting or something like that, because I don't like the fact that there's a lot of uninformed voters. But part of the problem is we have too much voting. We're not supposed to be a democracy. We're a republic. There's a lot of things we shouldn't be voting on, that the state legislature should be involved in, or whatever. When it comes to democracy, pure democracy, one of my favorite quotes is Winston Churchill. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, we talked about the Bill of Rights, your rights, all that today. I didn't get into the First Amendment yet on purpose. I wanted you to understand these things about our rights, the Bill of Rights, why it exists, the fears, all of that. Here's what we're going to do next week. First Amendment, probably the Second Amendment, maybe the Third, but definitely the First. And there are 5 rights that are enumerated in the First Amendment. The question is, what did they mean when they put those in there? What did they mean by that? Why are they there? What is the history behind it? What is expected when it comes to speech, to the press, to assembly, to religion, to petition the government for redress of grievances? What was meant by those being there?
Doug, I have a question. Earth Angel is asking, is there any information about the constitutional free zone states within 100 miles of any border? Do you know what she's talking about?
I know what she's talking about, and I disagree with that concept.
Okay. I've never even heard of it, honestly.
It's
I'm embarrassed.
Constitution free zones. Yeah.
I looked it up, and the first thing that pops up is on the ACLU. So, I once I got past the hammer and sickle, I was, I still don't know what this is.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it, and from a constitutional standpoint, I disagree with them. There's no constitutional authority regarding those. It's largely used in association with sovereignty, the sovereign movement, and immigration.
Mostly immigration, probably.
Yeah, but constitutionally, there's no authority.
Let's see. Nothing else so far. We're just people thanking us for our time. And with that, guys, just to talk about Scott again real quick. The tour is over. They unloaded the bus, and Scott's still down. He's still not feeling well. The one thing that I learned about that guy is he is tough as nails. He will be back. This will not kick him. This will not keep him down. And moreover, he'll probably come back with an even brighter and more intense burning flame to keep this going. So you're not going to keep Scott McKay down. That's not going. Patriot Street Fighters don't quit. So anyway, that being said, we haven't talked about. I haven't said that in a long time. That being said, that we actually made a shirt about that. That's a whole inside joke. But I don't see any other questions. So I think we're good, brother.
I have a question.
Fire away.
I've got a graphic artist I'm working with. When are we going to get a Doug store up? Everybody out there, you want to have a Doug store? Get some shirts out there that says Mr. Constitution says.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about
that.
Did you see my hat? Did you see my hat?
I want to hear real quick, because you've got the I'm not looking at the chat room, everybody. So I just want you to respond in the chat room. Would you like to see a Doug store with some We the People stuff, Constitution says, Mr. Constitution says stuff? Wouldn't you love to see something like that? I think so.
Yeah. Well, I think they yes, they do.
Did I just open up a can of worms in the chat room?
No. No. No, people are commenting about my hat.
Oh, that needs to be in my store. No, I'm kidding. I actually do have a We the People hat, but it's not as nice as that one.
Yes, we want a Doug store. Yes. So there's a little bit of a delay. So yes, it's coming.
Well, I tell you what, I do have 7 books out there, but I don't want them on Amazon any longer. I want to have a Doug store with those books. I've got a graphic artist that's helping me work on some stuff for shirts. And I'm actually talking with some folks about doing an event out in Sioux City, Iowa.
Oh, okay.
So I'll keep you guys posted. I might be out in Sioux City, Iowa sometime. We're looking at November.
Excellent. Well, we got 200 people watching right now, but we are gonna close it down now, and we will be back every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, and so 6 p.m. Eastern.
And don't forget, guys, DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com, youtube.com/DouglasVGibbs.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug.
The link to this YouTube page is on my page.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Doug. I apologize. There's a lot of you guys are asking about where you can find the old episodes. If you go to Scott's Rumble channel, you can find the you could, if you just do a search of Patriot, Street Fighter, and Constitution, all of them will come up. We have them all archived there, and we may be uploading them to this channel as well. But this is basically an incognito channel that I was using so that it wouldn't get kicked off of YouTube. But this is still Scott's. This is all Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter. I'm just the substitute here. I don't take any credit for this. So
I do plan on the DouglasVGibbs.com video page to find the different links of all the different videos and list them
we
on
need to
that
work on
page
that
as well. So
okay,
down the road, hopefully in the next few days.
excellent. Okay, guys, with that, we are going to sign off, and we will see y'all next week.